And of course, in 2003 is when I had that big scam with the X-Men #1 that chased me out of the comic book hobby. Rob stayed collecting, and you know, in and we stay in touch uh, going forward from 2003. Sadly, we never get to meet each other face to face again because I was always too busy. I run my own business by then, um, and every time that I was in New York for business, we just never able to find the right time to hook up and hang out and catch up. We always too busy with something else, have something else going on that we always keep saying next time, next time. Because I used to go to New York a couple times a year for business, so we always thought that there will be a chance for next time. And so by 2008, well, we both also had our son in 2007, so we share a few other things in common that we're excited to be. He had a daughter before, 2 years prior, so this is not his first kid, but Anthony was my first and only. And so we both have son at the same time in 2007. And then in 2008, like a summer of 2008, I did get an invite from him to join Facebook because he began to use Facebook a lot, and I was never a big, techie kind of person, so I kind of ignored the invitation. And over the years, over the next few weeks and months, I keep getting the reminder from Facebook to join it or accept the invitation, but I kind of blow that off, and then the next 6 months I kind of forgot about it. Here my son was getting to be 1.5, 2 years old, so there was a lot more work in taking care of him. And sure, when as any dad would know, when there's a baby, it's easy. You just lay it there, feed it, change a diaper, that's it. But once a kid is walking, talking, climbing, it require more of your attention. So my days would become very hectic, and so I kind of let things slide as far as keeping up with Rob. From mid 2008, and I wasn't collecting comic books at the time also. So that was not in my mind whatsoever. And then in late March of 2009, I finally got around to find that old email that invite me to join his Facebook. So I jumped on it and said yes, finally let's get on Facebook, so that maybe that's a better way for us to stay connected, because with our busy lives, it's just too hard to stay in touch sometime. And I definitely didn't want to lose that friendship. And to my surprise, the very next day, I got an email back from his wife saying, "Nick, I guess you didn't know, Rob passed away. He died last month." It was probably the saddest day of my life. I was devastated. It was shocking, because here I was, saying to myself, God, only like 7 months ago we exchanged some communication, some emails. What the heck can happen in the short span? Rob's wife, luckily at that moment, she directed me to a blog that she kept. It's like basically like a internet diary of the event that happened that led to his death, and it was a beautifully written memoir, diary of what happened. Apparently, him and his wife went on their 10th wedding anniversary in San Francisco in September of 2008. And Rob felt some dizziness, and he lost balance, and he was having trouble standing up. You know, he felt really out of focus with his eyes, and they rushed him, or he and his wife rushed him to the doctor while on vacation because something was very wrong, and you know, it turns out they discovered that he has a brain tumor, cancer, a very large one, and immediately they cut the vacation short and flew back to New York to seek treatment. You gotta understand, what is shocking for me to read all these things was Rob and his wife were two of the healthiest people I know. They run marathons for you know, as long as I can remember. They run the New York Marathon every year. They run the Boston Marathon every year. They were healthy, young people. And to find out that, you know, he has this, and it was mind-boggling. But the blog was beautifully written and it was very moving to read how, you know, he went into chemotherapy and seek out the best potential available treatments from the start of October. But, you know, unfortunately, it was a late stage cancer, stage 3 or stage 4, that all effort failed, and he deteriorated quickly from, you know, being dizzy and unable to walk to being bedridden by Christmas. And basically by early January he no longer can, you know, do anything. He was just like, the treatment has sapped him to a point where by January he's blind, but he can still hear. And then you know, he passed away. I'm still sad talking about it. Anyhow, because of that, I remember being so low emotionally that my wife recommended that I go back to comic books, because hopefully that will bring me back. And it did. Okay, so this video is really a dedication to you, Rob, my good friend, you miss, and you're always on my mind whenever I go see a good movie, because I always wish that you were with me going to see this movie. But anyhow, let's move on to the topic for this segment. David Goyer. I'm sure for those that do pay attention to the writers and directors, David Goyer, the name, is probably not something that you haven't heard of, but he is definitely one of those writers that have his share of hit and misses, and for sure he surprised me in many ways, a lot of time bad as well as good. For those that doesn't know much about David Goyer, you know, he got his feet wet in a long time ago, and his early success in writing was some of my favorite early Marvel superhero movies. Blade, you know, I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that I enjoy Blade 1 and Blade 2 very much, and David Goyer was heavily involved in writing for those two movies. The two Blade movies, the first two movies was fantastic. I mean, I felt that they are about as good as they can be as far as Blade, the character. The tone of the movies, the cast, the action, everything was a lot of fun. It no doubt has remained as some of my favorite small action superhero movies, because I might be in the minority, but the director of Blade 2, the Toro, I can't really pronounce his name, is fantastic. I enjoy most of his work. He has done many other things since doing Blade 2. He has done other stuff before and got some recognition, but I think Blade 2, in my opinion, kind of pushed him into the limelight of Hollywood. And then he did a few other movies. Hellboy is probably the next big one that he did, which I also enjoy. I like Hellboy a lot. Hellboy 2, I believe he also directed Hellboy 2. And I'm not sure what to think of Hellboy 2. Visually, it was beautiful. But I'm just not, somehow that movie just didn't do it for me. But before we go away from David Goyer, which is what this video is going to try and focus, is I found that Blade 1 and Blade 2 was almost ahead of its time. I mean, some of the special effect of the vampire disintegrate into ashes was just beautifully done. It's one of those movies where I did not hesitate to buy a Blu-ray DVD for my collection so that I can watch it over and over and over again, because it's a lot of fun. But David Goyer went on to do that, to write Blade 1 and Blade 2, and then he also did Blade 3, which was a complete mess. I had high hopes for Blade 3 after Blade 2 came out, but I guess it's the curse of the trilogy, as some people always call it. Usually the third movie of a series tend to bomb or not so good. And Blade 3, it has a decent cast. I'm not a Ryan Reynolds hater, so I was excited to see him attached to the movie. And then you get Jessica Biel. Who doesn't love Jessica? She's beautiful. She's great. What's fun for that movie? The only thing that was fun for me for that movie was seeing her doing the action stuff that you didn't expect. Before that movie, she was in a TV show that never really showcased any of her physicality. So it was neat to see Jessica Biel in that kind of a badass role, and I think that was probably one of the very few highlights of Blade 3. As you all probably heard, or if you haven't, Blade right to future movies has returned back to Marvel. So now Marvel is free to do whatever it wants with that character. It's no longer belong to somebody else as far as the movie. But after Blade 3, David Goyer also got involved in some really bad movie like the Ghost Rider stuff. I can say that Ghost Rider 2 was an utter mess. I rented on DVD and I couldn't finish it. It was just a complete piece of garbage. So if David, you wrote that piece of crap, why, how? And it's shocking to see something like that. Even if you read the script, you can't possibly say, oh, this can possibly work in some way. No, it was garbage from the first second to the last second. Regardless if Nicolas Cage is the right person or not, the whole script was so bad, everything was bad about that movie. Now, just go back to the earlier part of my video when I'm talking about cost of a movie and profit or not profit. You know, there's many reasons why a bad movie like Ghost Rider 2 gets the green light. You know, it's at the end of the day, the heart of the studio is about making money. Okay, good script, bad script. They look at they do their cost analysis study, and they say, okay, if David Goyer and his team of director approach them and say, you know, we can do this movie for 50 million. That's it. That's all it's gonna cost. The studio will probably say yes, and that's what they did. They figured it was worth the risk to spend only 50, 55 million or whatever it was the cost of that movie to go forward, because they know there are a certain segment of the international market that couldn't care less about plots and stories and characters. They just want to see blow up action, stupid or not. They just want to see blow up action. That's geared more towards certain segment of the international market, because there's a segment of the international market that don't care much about the dialogue or the storyline, because for whatever reason, maybe the English was not their first language and they don't really care to read the subtitles. Sometimes action alone explain what the heck is going on. And so, you know, Hollywood tend to be more globally focused today than ever in order to satisfy the international market that just want pure action. And I'm sure you have read a little bit about how J.J. Abrams had kind of direct the last Star Trek movie with that in mind, because you know he didn't really focus much on the Star Trek theme of discovery and all the other grander message that Star Trek tend to carry with it. You know, he focused more on deliver what the international market wanted. It was just a lot of non-stop action, and I'm sure that's how something like Ghost Rider 2 get the green light. You know, if the producer, the writers can convince them that they can keep the movie under a certain budget, and they kind of have an idea of how the international market is going to work, they will do it. And guess what? Ghost Rider did not lose money compared to something like John Carter, or compared to John Carter. John Carter cost 3 times more and raked in nowhere near enough to break even. So that's kind of give you an idea of what's going on with the studios when they're talking about, you know, what should we do, how should we move forward with certain characters or certain movies. At the end of the day, the cost of production is a big part of the equation. And you know, so back to David Goyer. So the Ghostbusters stuff was just complete garbage. And then he went on to team up with Chris Nolan and did the Dark Knight trilogy. Figure that, here's a guy that went from doing Blade, the Ghost Rider, to Dark Knight, and now the Man of Steel. Certainly when I heard his involvement with the movie The Man of Steel, it scares me a little bit. So hopefully next week when I do a review of the movie, I will give you my take of the movie. But certainly I think he did an okay job with Chris Nolan on writing The Dark Knight trilogy. So hopefully it's not a trend of hit, miss. But we'll see. I think David Goyer is a name that's going to be around for a long time, just because he has had a lot of experience under his belt. Like it or not, I think the studio is very comfortable with him being involved in a project, especially superhero-based project, because he has had dozens of films under his belt. And for the most part, regardless if I think it's stink or not, his movies made money. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed my first video on movie ramblings, and I look forward to doing a lot more of this since I love movies just as much as I love comic books. Thanks.